The court said, and the prosecution may call its next.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, could we just have one?
The court said yes.
Ms. Strofa said, Thank you.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, the government calls Lonny.
The law clerk said, Would you please pull the microphone witness? Minute. Soza, close to you, raise your right hand.
Witness sworn.
The law clerk said, Thank you.
The court said, Please state your name and spell it.
The witness said, Lonny, Lonny, Soza, Soza.
The court said, I need you to speak into the microphone and speak up so everyone can hear you.
The witness said, Lonny, Lonny, Soza, Soza.
The court said, You may inquire.
Mr. Finkel said, Thank you, Your Honor.
Lonny Soza, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Mr. Finkel.
Good afternoon, Mr. Soza. I'd just ask if you can point the mic directly at your mouth. You can feel free to move the mic and move your chair, and with the mic at your mouth, it will be easier for everybody to hear you, okay?
Okay.
Where do you work?
Post Oak Motor Cars.
And where is Post Oak Motor Cars?
In Houston, Texas.
What is Post Oak Motor Cars?
It's a luxury automobile dealership.
What's your position at Post Oak Motor Cars?
I'm the president and general manager.
What sort of cars, if any, does Post Oak sell?
New cars. We sell Bugatti, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, and Karma.
What's a Karma?
It's a fully electric car.
What's a Bugatti?
Bugatti is what we would consider a hypercar or a supercar. Pretty exotic and very low-volume built vehicle.
I'm just going to ask you to point the microphone directly at your mouth, okay?
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Did you call it a hypercar?
Hypercar or supercar is how we refer to them.
And can you explain to the members of the jury what a hypercar is?
Hypercar is typically an exotic type of vehicle, like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, McLaren. They're higher-end vehicles. Bugatti's a little bit different in that the volume of the vehicle built is a lot less.
The court said, How many are produced in a year?
The witness said, I don't know in a year, but what they do is there's 500 Bugattis built. They started building them in 2018, and they would only build 500 worldwide, and so from 18 to 2025 is how that was split up.
How much does a Bugatti cost?
Typically between. They started when they first launched at base price of 2.9 million, but up to over 5 million pretty easily.
And that's for one car?
One car.
Can you describe to the, withdrawn? Did there come a time, if ever, where G-Clubs purchased a Bugatti from Post Oak Motors?
Yes.
Can you describe to the members of the jury the process of purchasing a Bugatti, how that works?
It's a little unique and not your typical car purchase. The vehicles are made. They're what they call bespoke built for each client that buys one, so they initially require a deposit, which holds your spot for the vehicle for one of the 500. And then there's a point where their client's vehicle would begin to be built. And you have to configure the vehicle, which means you have to say how you want it to be built, which then requires a second deposit. From the time that the vehicle starts. The process of building the vehicle starts is about 10 months, and then at that final 10 months, the vehicle is done, it gets paid for in full, and then delivered to the client.
And when you say delivered to the client, what does that mean?
Well, it gets delivered to the store, and then we would in turn sell the vehicle to the client.
You also mentioned that a Bugatti is bespoke. Can you just explain what that means in the context of Bugattis?
Bespoke is it's pure custom built. So if you wanted to create your own color, create your own theme, your own leathers or leather kind of, configuration, you could do it. There's very few limitations, other than changing the body of the car. There's very few limitations in how you can style the vehicle.
Approximately how many dealerships in the United States, if any, sell Bugattis?
I believe there's 14.
And Post Oak is one of them.
And we're one of them.
Are there any in the tri-state area?
I think the closest one to this area is in Connecticut.
What is H.R. Owen?
H.R. Owen is a luxury dealership based out of London that sells Bugattis as well, and I believe Bentley and Rolls-Royce.
What business, if any, did H.R. Owen refer to Post Oak in the fall of 2021?
So H.R. Owen had a client that they say wanted to have a US spec Bugatti. And they could not sell, obviously, overseas. They couldn't sell and export, so they asked us if we would to sell the vehicle on their behalf and split the profit with them.
And why could H.R. Owen not sell a U.S. vehicle?
Those vehicles have to be homologated to be able to drive on U.S. words.
And what's homologated mean?
It basically makes the vehicle roadworthy and meets all the national highway and safety transportation requirements.
And did you agree to take on this client from H.R. Owen?
I did.
What's the name of the client?
Mileson Gov't.
How do you spell Gov't?
Guo.
What was your understanding of what Mileson sought?
Just to have a US spec car.
And why is that?
For his home or one of his homes in the US.
And where was that home located?
Initially I was understanding it to be Connecticut.
Did you ever meet Mileson Gov't?
No, sir.
And in the fall of 2021, what was your understanding of who Mileson Gov't was?
Back then, he was just a billionaire that was looking to buy another supercar.
Who handled the configuration, the bespoke specifications for this Mileson Bugatti, H.R. Owen or Post Oak?
H.R. Owen.
And who made the payments for this Mileson Gov't Bugatti?
G Club International.
And what was your understanding of, withdrawn? At this time, in the fall of 2021, what was your understanding of what G Club International was?
It was just one of his companies.
Did you communicate with anyone from G Club?
Yes, I did. The CEO of G Club International.
What was their name?
Limori Reyes Molinares.
Did you communicate with anyone else from G Club?
No, from G Club, no.
Did you communicate with anyone else about this Bugatti?
Towards the end of the transaction, the gentleman named Mr. He.
Mr. He?
He.
What was Mr. He's first name?
I don't know.
Okay. Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, may I approach?
The court said yes.
Mr. Finkel said, handing the witness a binder of several documents. I'll ask you to please flip through that binder. Mr. Finkel said, For the record, that binder contains government exhibits 226 to 233, 240, 243, and 244 to 249. Mr. Soza, have you seen this binder before?
Yes, I have.
And when have you seen it before?
Earlier today.
Okay. And what is in that binder?
These are communications via email as well as the contract to order the Bugatti and the actual configuration for the vehicle.
Okay. Any financial documents in there?
Yes, there are. There are transactions for wire transfers.
Okay. And with respect to the communications, who are the communications with?
Myself, Ms. Limori from G Club, and H.R. Owen.
And the financial documents, where are they from?
Those are from my office.
And does your office maintain financial documents?
Yes, we do.
In the regular course of business?
We do.
Mr. Finkel said, All right. Your Honor, the government offers GX 226 to 233, 240, 243, and 244 to 249.
Mr. Barkan said, No objection, Your Honor.
The court said, It is admitted or they are admitted.
Government's Exhibits 226 to 233, 240, 243, and 244 to 249 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
By Mr. Finkel.
Mr. Soza, by the way, where is H.R. Owen located?
London, England.
And you mentioned that you understood in the fall of 2021 that G Clubs was his company. I think is what you said.
Correct.
Whose company?
Mr. Gw's.
Mr. Finkel said, "Okay. If we can please pull up, Ms. Loftus, or I'm sorry." Mr. Gartland, what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 226? And we can publish it, please. Mr. Soza, do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is it?
This is the initial contract for ordering the Bugatti.
Mr. Finkel said, "Okay. And if we can zoom in at the top half, please, Mr. Gartland. And who's the buyer?
G Club International Limited.
And why does it say G Club International Limited instead of Miles Sungwa?
Because we understood it to be purchased by his company.
And is that a common occurrence in your line of business?
It's a very common occurrence.
Why is that?
We see a lot of vehicles being purchased by companies, churches, different entities.
Okay.
Quite often.
And on the right side it says ordered vehicle Bugatti Chiron Super Sport?
Correct.
Can you explain to the members of the jury what a Chiron Super Sport is?
Chiron is the 500 Bugatti being built right now. Super Sport is one of the iterations of those 500 cars. They make I don't know exactly how many they make. But let's say it's a percentage of the 500 cars or Super Sports.
Where are Bugattis manufactured?
In Molsheim, France.
Mr. Finkel said, "Okay. And we can zoom out of that. And if we can go to the second page. And if you can zoom in on the top 2A, please. And so can you explain to the members of the jury, please, Mr. Soza, what the base price for this vehicle was?"
The base price is $3.825 million.
And is that a negotiated price?
It is not.
Who sets the price?
Bugatti does.
And what does the price depend on? You said before there was a range.
The earlier model Chiron started out as a base price of $2.9 million. By the time they got to the Super Sport, the base price had risen to $3.825 million.
Mr. Finkel said, "You can zoom out of that, please. And if we can go to page 4. In paragraph 4, Mr. Soza, there are sort of initial payment, second payment, final payment. Can you just explain what that's about?"
So the initial payment is the deposit that says you're a committed buyer. And you're waiting for your allocated slot. When Bugatti allocates your position or slot for your vehicle to be built, then a second payment, a second deposit is required, along with a signed configuration saying that this is the vehicle. This is how the vehicle is going to be specified. And then again, when the vehicle is built and undergoing its final testing phases, then full payment is required prior to the vehicle being shipped from the manufacturer to the store.
Mr. Finkel said, "If we can go to page 7, please, Mr. Gartland. And if you can scroll down a little bit, so we have both 7 and 8. Perfect. Do you see paragraph 11, Mr. Soza? It says compliance/sanctions list.
I do.
What is the purpose of that paragraph?
If there are any clients on any sanctions list, in my world we look at a system called sorry. I'm at a loss for words right now, oh fuck. That would tell us if basically we're allowed to do business with any particular party, and yeah. That's basically it. It's a no-go list for us.
Okay. And this particular purchase, did Post Oak run its due diligence and OFAC check?
Yes.
Any problems?
No, sir.
Mr. Finkel said, "If we can go to page 10, please, Mr. Gartland. Who signed this contract?"
That's Limori Reyes from G Club International and myself.
And what is your understanding, if any, why Ms. Reyes signed this contract as opposed to Miles Sangua? As you say?
Right. She was the CEO of the company and it's, again, pretty normal for us to do. To have these kind of transactions where a representative of the company will buy the car.
Representative of whose company?
Of any company.
In this case, representative of whose company?
Of Mr. Guo's company.
Mr. Finkel said, okay. If we can go to Government Exhibit 227, which is in evidence. And this top document, is this an email from you to Ms. Reyes?
That's correct.
And what are you attaching to this email?
This is the, we say, specifications. This is the configuration for the vehicle as it's to be built.
Mr. Finkel said, you can scroll down, please, Mr. Gartland. Keep going. Right there. And what is this page that the jury is looking at?
This is a summary page of the price of the Chiron Super Sport, along with a digital image of what it should look like.
And that's the image of the car.
Correct.
And so this is the sort of a computerized spec of what the car will look like after it was designed.
Correct.
And for customer name, what's the customer name?
Miles Sangua.
Mr. Finkel said, and then if you can zoom in back on that again, please. And then below, you said Miles Sangua, is that right?
Correct.
There is base price options and total price. What's going on there?
So the base price is just the car before you do add any particular personal touches to it. In this case it was $599,800 of additional options added to the vehicle.
And so the total price was?
For $8 million.
And the additional options that cost just a shade under $600,000. What is your understanding of who selected those additional options?
Mr. Guo.
Mr. Finkel said, scroll down, please, Mr. Gartland, to the next page. Keep going. Keep going, please. We're going to go to page 7. And Mr. Gartland, I'll ask that you sort of slowly scroll through the next couple pages. And as he does that, Mr. Soza, can you explain to the members of the jury what we're looking at?
These are digital renditions of the vehicle as it should be built.
Mr. Finkel said, stop right there. What is that plaque?
That's, all Bugattis have that plaque as one of 500. It doesn't tell you which number in the sequence that it falls in, but it's one of 500 to be built.
This Miles Sangua Bugatti, what number Bugatti was it?
This was actually number 400, coincidentally.
Mr. Finkel said, if we could go now to Government Exhibit 230. And I want to direct your attention, Mr. Soza, to the second email, dated November 12, 2021. And what is Ms. Reyes communicating? What is your understanding of what Ms. Reyes is communicating to you in this email?
She's confirming that the configuration chosen was accepted and approved.
And what is the subject line of this email?
The subject line is Configuration Form Chiron Super Sport Miles Sangua version 1.
Were there any changes made after that configuration was sent along?
I don't believe so.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can look at Government Exhibit 232. And this first email from Ms. Reyes to you, I believe, on November 30th, 2021. What is your understanding of what Ms. Reyes is communicating to you in this email?
We had received a second deposit for the vehicle, or a wire, unsolicited. And it's hard for us to tell where a wire came from sometimes or what car it's allocated to. So, because it was such a large amount, and internally we could only really associate it with this vehicle. So I'm asking Ms. Reyes if they had sent this amount of money to us to confirm that it was received. Or to confirm it was to go towards the Bugatti purchase.
And she's confirming it?
She's confirming it.
And what was the amount of that wire payment?
$1,150,000.
And what's the subject line of this email?
Configuration Form Chiron Super Sport Miles Sangua version 1.
Mr. Finkel said. If we can look at GX233, please. You can scroll down, please. And what is this document?
This is the final invoice for requesting final payment for the Bugatti since it had completed its process of being built.
And did Milesungwa's company pay in full for this Bugatti?
Eventually, yes. Yes.
And was that cash or did they take out a loan?
It was all wire transfers.
Did there come a time, if ever, when the Bugatti was delivered to Post Oak?
Yes, the vehicle was shipped from the manufacturer to Post Oak.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, may I approach again?
The court said, Did you offer financing?
The witness said, There is actually financing available for those cars. It's a unique program, but it's only on the final payment.
Mr. Soza, I'm handing you a bunch of documents, which I'll identify in a moment. If you could just look through those, please. Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, for the record, these are government exhibits 202 to 223. Do you recognize those images, Mr. Soza?
I do.
What are they?
They're of the actual vehicle.
Images of the actual Bugatti?
Bugatti Chiron Super Sport.
Mr. Finkel said, Government offers 202 to 223.
Mr. Barkan said, No objection, Your Honor.
The court said, They're admitted.
Government's exhibits 202 to 223 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, Mr. Gartland, if we could please publish Government Exhibit 218.
By Mr. Finkel.
What is Government Exhibit 218?
This is the Bugatti Chiron Super Sport.
This is the one that Milesungwa ordered?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Finkel said, and if we can look at both 216 and 205. Where is this photograph taken?
This was in the shop of our store.
What kind of tires does this car have?
They're specially made Michelin tires, built only for this car.
How much do they cost?
To replace, about $10,000.
And how often does the owner of this vehicle have to replace the $10,000 tires?
Typically every 500 or so miles.
500?
500.
Why does the tire need to be replaced after only 500 miles?
I'm sure it's built for the performance of the car. The rubber is typically softer, so it's going to wear out a little bit faster based on how the car drives.
What other upkeep is required for this sort of vehicle?
There's annual maintenance that's required.
How much does that cost?
About $80,000.
And what happens for the annual maintenance?
The vehicle, basically the back half of the vehicle, is removed and a lot of the hoses and seals in the vehicle are all replaced. It's about a crate, a pallet's worth of materials, mechanical materials that go back into the car.
Can any regular car service shop service a Bugatti?
No, sir.
To your knowledge, what's the closest service shop for a Bugatti of this sort to New York City?
Greenwich, Connecticut.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can look at Government Exhibit 209, please. How many miles were on this car when it was delivered?
245.
Why so many?
Part of the process for doing the quality check for the vehicle is road testing it on actual roads. So Bugatti will put that amount of miles basically braking in the car before it's delivered to the client. So when it's delivered, it's ready to drive.
And what advice, if any, do you give Bugatti customers about how many miles they should put on it a year?
There's two schools of thought. One is, if you're a collector, you put as little miles as possible, and the other is, the car is made to be driven. Drive it for anywhere in the world you want, so, yeah.
How fast does it go?
This particular model, shy of 300 miles per hour, but they do make one that goes over 300.
And you said if you're a collector, you want to put on as few miles as possible. What do you mean by that? Like if you're a collector, what do you mean by that?
The cars, are anticipated to appreciate in value, so obviously the lower the miles. As the car ages, the higher the value should go, theoretically.
Do you market this kind of car as an investment to some customers?
We don't market it as an investment, but we do have that discussion with clients.
Did you have that discussion in this particular case with Milson Gua?
I've never talked to Milson Gua.
What about with Limari Reyes?
No, and 201.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can look at Government Exhibits 202. Mr. Soza, what is this box in Government Exhibit 202 and opened in 201?
This is the key box. It holds the fancier key for the vehicle and also what we call a super key, which is used to unlock the higher performance of the vehicle if you're going to take it on a track.
If one were to lose the super key, how much would it cost to replace?
The bigger key in there, I believe, is around $10,000.
Mr. Finkel said, okay. We can take that down. You mentioned someone named Mr. He. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you ever communicate with him in any way?
We did, a couple of emails and a couple of phone calls.
Okay. And just at a high level, what was the nature of your discussions with Mr. He?
Determining where the vehicle would ultimately be registered so that we could calculate taxes and registration and do final delivery for the car.
And why did you start talking to Mr. He as opposed to Ms. Reyes?
I was directed, I was trying to finish out this transaction. And at some point in time Ms. Reyes wasn't as responsive. And then Mr. He came into the picture to discuss options of taking delivery of the vehicle.
And what did Mr. He say, if anything, about taxes?
He was wanting to find out where he could register the vehicle and basically pay as little to or no taxes for the car.
And what advice, if any, did you provide Mr. He about taxes?
Well, I told him I couldn't provide him a guidance on that particular matter.
And did there come a time, if ever, where, well, you had the car in your lot? Is that correct?
We did.
Did Mr. He want to come pick it up in your lot?
No. They were, well, I say they. He was asking if we could have the vehicle shipped overseas for them.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can show what's in evidence, I believe as government exhibit, yup, 240. We can zoom in on that email. Please, Mr. Garland. What's the date of this email?
This is February 9th, 2023.
And can you read the first sentence? From, oh sorry. Who is this email from?
This is from Mr. He.
And what's his email address?
It is coolLHR@protonmail.com.
And can you read the first sentence he wrote to you?
We have the register company ready. Please let me know what informations do you need for the register?
And then the second paragraph.
In regarding for delivery, we are planning for a tour with this vehicle. Could we have quotations for delivery this vehicle to from US to UK, Switzerland, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi for temporary import less than 6 months on a single location if you provide this service, please?
Have you ever been to Abu Dhabi?
I have not been to Abu Dhabi.
Have you ever been to Dubai?
I have been to Dubai.
What is your understanding why Mr. He wanted to ship this car to Switzerland, Dubai, or Abu Dhabi?
I don't know that I had an understanding other than they wanted to take delivery outside of the US.
If Post Oak wanted to, could it have shipped this Bugatti Chiron Super Sport to a foreign country?
No, we could not.
Why not?
Because we don't export vehicles.
Why not?
It's just typically the manufacturers restrict us, in our dealer agreements, from doing so.
At this time, so by February 9th, 2023, had Post Oak been contacted by the FBI?
Yes, sir.
And what did the FBI, initially, what did the FBI seek from Post Oak, if anything?
They subpoenaed all the documents. Any communications and documentation regarding this transaction.
And did Post Oak provide such documents?
We did.
And at this time, in February of 2023, were you still in contact with the FBI?
Yes, we were.
And U.S. Attorney's Office?
Yes, sir.
Did there come a time where the FBI returned to Post Oak with a search warrant?
Yes, they did.
And can you tell the jury what that search warrant was for?
The search warrant was to install tracking devices in the vehicle.
Which vehicle?
The Bugatti Chiron Super Sport.
And did the FBI do that?
They did.
After the FBI installed tracking devices in the Bugatti Chiron Super Sport, did anyone from G Clubs or Miles Sungwa or Mr. He pick up the Super Sport?
No, sir.
Mr. Finkel said, "We can look at Government Exhibit 223. Mr. Soza, what are we looking at here?"
This is the Bugatti Chiron being loaded into a transport for. It was being seized at the time.
Who seized it?
The U.S. Marshals.
And did they have a warrant for it?
They did.
And around the time of the seizure, did the FBI ask you to do anything else?
Prior to the seizure, they asked me to send communications to Mr. He via email.
And did you do that?
I did.
And after you sent those communications to Mr. He, did the FBI ask you to do anything else?
They had asked me to communicate with him via text.
Did you do that?
I did not.
Why not?
I just wasn't comfortable with it.
And what, if anything, did Post Oak do after you were asked to talk to Mr. He via text?
We provided the FBI with a phone from our account.
And do you know what, if anything, the FBI did with that account?
I do not.
Do you know if the FBI had conversations with Mr. He?
I do not.
Do you know what Mr. He's relationship is, if any, with Ma Sungwa?
I do not.
Or G Clubs?
No, sir.
One moment. Mr. Finkel said, "If we can take that down and display Government Exhibit GX635. It's an evidence so we can publish it. Please. If you can zoom into the top of that, please, Mr. Gartland. Can you read that top sentence, please?"
Written resolution of the sole director.
And the next sentence?
Freedom Media Ventures Limited.
Have you seen this document before?
No, sir.
And can you read the sentence below where it says, "Written resolution of the sole director. Freedom Media Ventures Limited, the company."
How and he, you want me to read that?
Yeah.
Being the sole director of the company. A company limited by shares organized under the laws of the British Virgin Islands, with its registered address at 2nd floor Water's Edge Building, Wickham's Quay 2, Road Town Tortola, British Virgin Islands. Hereby certify that the following resolutions were resolved.
In total, how much did Post Oak collect as a result of the sale of this Bugatti Super Sport?
I believe for .4 million and change.
Mr. Finkel said, "Nothing further. Thank you."
The court said, "Cross-examination?"
Mr. Barkan said, "Yes, Your Honor."
Cross-examination. By Mr. Barkan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Soza.
Good afternoon.
You're the president of Post Oak Motors?
Right.
Yes, sir. You've been in that role for about 7 years?
Correct.
Post Oak sells high-end cars, right?
Correct.
Super high-end cars, right?
The court said, "If you would draw the microphone closer to you, please."
Mr. Barkan said, "Sorry, Your Honor. Post Oak sells high-end cars, right?
Yes, sir.
Super high-end cars, right?
Correct.
Including Bugattis, right?
Including Bugattis.
Bugatti made the world's fastest car, right?
To a certain point, yes.
Over 1,000 kilometers an hour?
I don't know kilometers. I know miles.
And Post Oak sells the Chiron, right?
Correct.
Very limited supply?
500.
Right. You testified on direct only 500 are going to be made ever. These are incredibly sought-after cars. Right?
I would say so.
You sell 1 or 2 a year, right, at most?
Correct.
Now the Bugatti ordered by G Clubs was number 400 out of 500, right?
Yes.
Fair to say it's pretty difficult to secure an opportunity to purchase that particular car.
What do you mean, the number 400?
Yeah.
I think that was a coincidence.
Is it fair to say that it's difficult to purchase any of the 500 cars?
Depends on the means of the person buying.
And you testified on direct that a Bugatti Chiron could appreciate in value, right?
We anticipate that that could be the case.
You testified on direct that the Chiron was going to originally be configured for Milson Gov't, right?
Yes.
By H.R. Owen, right?
Yes.
You understood that Milson Gov't was a regular customer of H.R. Owen, right?
Yes.
And it was your understanding, I think you testified on direct, that Milson just wanted another supercar. Right?
A US specification.
So your understanding is that Milson owned other supercars, right?
That was my understanding, but I don't know directly.
Have you heard of a car called the Pagani Zonda?
I don't know the Zonda, but I know Pagani as a brand.
Okay. Do you understand that Milson designed his own Pagani Zonda?
No.
It's not unusual for customers to be referred to you, right?
No, sir.
Including from other Bugatti dealerships, right?
Not in the States.
Here, H.R. Owen referred the purchase of the Chiron to Post Oak, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you understood that the customer wanted it for use in the United States, right?
Correct.
And it was designed to be used in the United States, right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Barkan said, can we pull up Government Exhibit 226, which is in evidence? And can we zoom in on the top half, please? Now at the top of the page, it says, supplemental terms for the purchase of the Bugatti Chiron Super Sport, right?
Yes, sir.
And under the word buyer, it says G Club International Limited, right?
Correct.
And then a few lines down, next to email, it says elimaria@gclubs.com, right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Barkan said, if we go to page 10, please. And you see the signature blocks here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Limori Reyes signed for the buyer, right?
Yes.
On October 28, 2021?
Yes.
And you understood that Limori Reyes was with G Clubs, right?
Correct.
In fact, you testified on direct she was their CEO, right?
Yes.
And that's your signature by the retailer, right?
It is.
Mr. Barkan said, we can take that down. Could we go to GX227, please? Okay. This is a November 1st, 2021, email from you two.
Limari Reyes, right?
Yes.
And it says, hi, Limori. Apologies for the delay in getting back to you. Attached you will find the specifications for the build coordinated with Art Catalozzi, our Bugatti partner in London. This configuration will need to be signed as well. Once we receive along with the deposit, your allocation slot will be locked in. You see that, right?
Yes, sir.
So on November 1st, you sent initial specifications to Ms. Molinares, right?
Yes.
Mr. Barkan said, can we scroll down to page 3? And let's look at the top half, please. So this is the first page of the specification you sent on November 1st, right?
Yes.
Okay. And at the top it says, personal configuration for Bugatti London, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next to customer name, it says Milson Gov't, right?
Yes.
Mr. Barkan said, okay. Let's go down to page 6 of the PDF, please. So if you look here, and if you focus on the bottom half of the page, you see the signature lines, right?
Yes.
They are blank, right?
Yes.
No one filled in signature lines, right?
No.
No one filled in the date lines?
No.
Milson Gov't didn't sign this document, right?
I don't see any signatures.
Mr. Barkan said, could we go to GX230, please? And if you look at the second email down, this is an email from Limori Molinares to you dated November 12th. Right?
Correct.
And she says, Dear Mr. Soza. Attached Bugatti's personal configuration accepted with approval signature. You see that, right?
Correct.
Mr. Barkan said, so let's go to page 4 of the PDF, please. And if we look at the top half, this is a similar document. It says, personal configuration for Bugatti London, right?
Yes.
But the customer name now says G Club International Limited, right?
It does.
No longer says Milesungua, right?
It does not.
Mr. Barkan said, if we go down to page 7, please. And here, do you see the line that says signature customer?
Yes.
And you see a signature above that line, right?
Yes.
And there's a date written in by hand?
Yes.
And that date is November 12, 2021, right?
Yes.
So the previous version of this document that we looked at that you sent to Ms. Molinares on November 1st had Milesungua identified in the document. Right?
It did.
But that version was unsigned, right?
The version that oh wait. I'm sorry. Say that again? Which version, the one that you said before?
The previous version we looked at.
Yes, that you showed us was unsigned, yes.
But 11 days later the customer was changed to G Club International, right?
It looks like it.
And that version was signed by the buyer, right?
I don't know whose signature that is.
But it's signed, right?
It's signed.
And Ms. Molinares sent that to you and said it was signed, right?
I don't remember. I don't remember seeing this document with G Club International on it. I'm not saying it's not there, but...
Mr. Barkan said, well, could we go back up to the first page of the document, please? So in the second email, this is Limori Reyes sending this signed document to you, right?
Okay.
And she's the CEO of G Clubs, isn't that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Barkan said, could we go to GX244, please? Thank you. Now I just want to confirm that you testified on direct that all of the payments for the Chiron came from G Clubs. Isn't that right?
I did not. I said they all came via wire transfer.
Your testimony is that the payments did not come from G Clubs.
They all came for the vehicle being purchased through G Clubs, but...
Okay. Well, let's look in column F.
All right.
The first and second deposit payments are indicated as coming from Limori Molinares, isn't that right?
Right.
And the fourth, fifth, and sixth lines indicate that G Club made these payments, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the second payment. Mr. Barkan said, could we pull up GX232 side by side with this document, please? So could we pull up GX232? Okay. And this is a November 30th, 2021, email from Limori Molinares to you, isn't that right?
Yes.
And she says, Dear Mr. Soza, I hope you had a wonderful holiday weekend. Apologies for the delayed response. Yes, our finance team submitted a payment for $1,150,000. Please confirm the above was the amount received, to be applied to our current remaining balance. You see that, right?
Yes. Please.
Mr. Barkan said, okay. Could we go back to GX244? And so line 3, that payment for $1,150,000. That's the payment that Ms. Molinares was confirming in that email, isn't that right?
Yes.
Thank you. There were no payments from Milesun, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
There were no payments from Milesungua, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
And there were no payments from Ho Wan Kwok, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
And there were no payments from Miles Kwok, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Mr. Barkan said, thank you. You can take that down. You mentioned on direct, you were asked about sanctions lists, right?
Yes, sir.
What's a sanctions list?
To the best of my knowledge, it's like like I said, we use OFAC. And my understanding is it tracks people who have illicitly moved money or terrorists, or funding terrorist organizations. And those, if we were to pull that, if somebody were to pop up on that list, obviously it's a red flag and we wouldn't be doing business with that person. I'm not sure what the exact protocols are after that, but
What's OFAC?
I don't know. It's a government agency. It's a government resource. I don't remember. I don't remember exactly what it means, but it's pulled for every transaction.
Mr. Soza. You testified on direct about an email in which Mr. He asked about price quotes for shipping the Chiron out of the United States. Right?
Correct.
That email was dated February of 2023, isn't that right?
I guess so, yeah. I'm not looking at it.
That was the first time Mr. He mentioned shipping the Chiron abroad, right?
As far as I can remember, yes.
Ms. Molinari's never mentioned shipping the Chiron abroad, right?
No.
And at the time the Chiron was ordered, your understanding was that it was for use in the United States. Right?
Yes.
And that's why the car was being shipped from France to the United States, right?
Yes.
And in fact, it was shipped from France to the United States, right?
It was.
Mr. Barkan said, "Thank you." Nothing further.
The court said, "Any redirect?"
Mr. Finkel said, "No. Thank you, Mr. Soza."
The court said, "Thank you. You may step out."
Witness excused.